The Saints quarterback battle between Tyler Shough and Spencer Rattler is definitely heating up at mandatory minicamp. Plus, I want to talk about the defense and why Kool-Aid McKinstry could be the X factor for the New Orleans Saints. All that right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Rosvogu, and as always, the Straight Up Saints podcast is brought to you by Scott Vicknair Injury Lawyers. Have been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, hurt offshore. Scott Vicknair handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. So mandatory minicamp means we're getting some clips. We're seeing the QBs in action. We're seeing the new revamped O-line. We're seeing the wide receivers. We're seeing a ton. We're seeing a ton for the Saints right now, and it just feels good. It feels like football is finally around the corner, and before you know, we'll be back at training camp. We'll have a lot of coverage there. Obviously, preseason is going to be super exciting for the Saints, and when week one comes around, it's going to feel like Christmas morning for a lot of us Saints fans. But before we get to that point, there's a lot that the Saints have to figure out, and the main question and the biggest storyline surrounding this team is going to be the quarterback battle, obviously, between Tyler Shough and Spencer Rattler. And that's where we're going to start for today's edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. As always, guys, remind you, if you're tuning in during the live stream portion of this show, feel free to leave your comments. Make sure to like the video if you haven't already. It greatly helps out the channel, and we really appreciate it. But yeah, make sure to get your thoughts in, anything Saints related, and I'll make sure to pull them up in the show. I see a couple of you guys in here. I see Jerry in here as usual. We appreciate you guys. So if you have any comments, drop them in. So let's get started. It's no secret that the Saints, the lack of hype surrounding this team, or the lack of confidence that the national media or just football fans in general have about this team, kind of stems from the fact that we don't know what the heck they're going to get at quarterback. And even me, someone who is, trending towards the optimistic side of things, can't tell you with a straight face right now that I definitely think that their quarterback room is going to shine this year, because Tyler Shough has never played in a game, and Spencer Rattler, has never won a game yet, similar to Shough. And also, we just don't know what to expect from him. So you have two unknowns. But what I can say about this quarterback battle so far that really at least gets me excited is these two dudes have live arms. It's effortless, just easily just floating out of their hand. And look, I think Shough's got work to do, and you'll hear that. If you had to say who's got the edge right now, it'd have to be Rattler as of, what's today's date? Today's date is June 11th. As of June 11th, Rattler would be the slight edge, obviously. He's got a year of NFL experience. He's had a little bit more time to get familiarized with Kellen Moore and his system. As for Shough, who you come in late April, everything is a quick ramp-up period. That said, what I do find interesting from all the reports today on this Wednesday for mandatory minicamp, Tyler Shough is looking more settled in, and the quarterback that everyone saw at rookie minicamp is not necessarily the quarterback they've seen at mandatory minicamp. You can already see some improvements. And what I would say about that is if Shough is taking these strides from now where, in a 1-2 week span, you're seeing a different player, you're seeing a more comfortable looking quarterback, I think that bodes well for his trajectory in a Saints uniform and bodes well for his chances of starting week one. On the flip side, though, Rattler's been playing extremely well. Some really good throws I saw today to Chris Olave, a really nice throw to Dante Pettis, which has been kind of labeled the throw of Wednesday's practice. So I think this is a great competition. Both guys are embracing it. And I think Brandon Cooks, who is really the vet in that offensive locker room, he had a really nice comment today. So he was interviewed by SiriusXM Radio, and this is what he had to say. He said, Tyler Shough has got some stuff to him. He's got a little swag. He's made every throw out here. Spencer's letting it fly. You're watching the competition. They're bringing the best out of each other. It's been cool to be able to see these guys battle in a healthy way. So vibes are up for this team. The veterans like what they're seeing from the quarterbacks, which I think is a great sign, obviously, for both these young guys and, their chances of starting week one. That said, this is where I'm at right now. And I think a lot of Saints fans should be this way because I've seen a lot of divide already. And I don't think I'm going to be the one to be able to stop it. I think, obviously everyone's got an opinion that they stand on, and you should stand on your opinion if that's, something you feel strongly about. But the way I'm approaching this Saints quarterback battle, you got Rattler, you got Shough. Both of them are absolutely letting it fly right now. Both of them have a lot of talent, and may the best man win. I think if this stays dead even, you're probably looking at Shough getting the nod week one. He was handpicked by Kellen Moore. If Shough wins the battle, obviously it's a no-brainer he's the starter. But I think the fact that he's keeping it close from now, I think it's a good sign for the rookie quarterback. I'm absolutely thrilled with the way Rattler's looked, at least from what we've heard so far. And look, there's a guy who has 6 starts under his belt. So if Shough's going to win that job, you know that he earned it. And I think for New Orleans, they're handling it the right way right now. And I think what's fascinating about the Saints is they don't want to interrupt this flow. I mean, we're not hearing anything about Jay Kaner right now, which kind of makes sense. He really isn't in the fold for this starting job. They're not going out and getting a veteran quarterback, whether it is, obviously Aaron Rodgers wasn't coming here, but a guy like Aaron Rodgers, Carson Wentz. I mentioned Teddy Bridgewater. The Saints aren't even doing that. They're sticking with guys from their coaching staff being those veteran voices. Kellen Moore, who obviously played in the league, Coach Nussmeier, even Scott Tolzien, their quarterbacks coach, who has experience playing in the NFL with the Green Bay Packers. So that's what they're using as their older, talking heads in that locker room that can be the shoulder to lean on for guys like Shough and Rattler. And I just love it. I think they're really enabling these 2 young quarterbacks to be the best versions of themselves. And does this mean either one's going to be a great starter? No, I can't say that. And I don't know for sure. But man, I'm really liking what I've seen so far from these 2. There is clear talent there from a young talent perspective. These dudes let it fly. So we'll see what happens. I would imagine as we get into actual training camp practice sessions, that's when we'll have a better idea. Because right now it is a battle of, Shough looked good in 7-on-7s, Rattler looked good in 7-on-7s, and there's no pads on and there's no pressure getting in their face. They're fine. But what happens when that defensive intensity raises up? Does a guy like Rattler take that next step in year 2? Does Shough, match that intensity and look comfortable? Or does he look a little rattled? I think that's something that we're all going to look at. So for now, everything's pointing up, but it's supposed to be. And I'm totally okay with that right now for the Saints. So let me get into what I want to talk about with the defense, and then I'll switch it over to any comments that you guys have. So again, if you guys are in the live stream right now, make sure to leave your comments. It can be anything Saints related. It doesn't have to be Spencer Rattler. Doesn't have to be Tyler Shough. It doesn't have to be the next guy that I'm talking about, Kool-Aid McKinstry, second-year quarterback for the Saints out of Alabama. Look, this might be a take that not everyone's going to agree with, and that's okay because, man, it doesn't have to always be everyone in agreement. But I think if you had to tell me, who do you think is going to be one of the biggest X factors for the Saints this year, I'm going to go Kool-Aid McKinstry. And that might seem a little outlandish for some people, but this is where I view this Saints team. I don't expect them to have a really good defensive line. I don't. I think Chase Young's going to have a pretty decent year. I think Brian Brzee, at least from a pass rusher, has shown he could be good. But Cam Jordan, what do we expect from him at this point? You've been in the league for well over a decade. I just can't see him playing and bouncing back at a high level. Carl Granderson, I think Granderson's a good player. Don't think he's a great player, but he'll be a contributor. But I don't expect the defensive line of the Saints to just be this wrecking crew that just takes over games. So what are they going to need? I think they're going to need the back end of their defense to really pick it up. And I've said many times, and I'll continue to say it, and by the way, he has looked outstanding so far in a Saints, at least practice uniform, I should say. Justin Reed was an excellent signing for the New Orleans Saints. He gives you range at the safety position. He gives you a downhill, hard-hitting safety who can really help out against the run game. And I think you need that veteran leadership to kind of take over because Tyrann Mathieu is obviously on his way out, both in terms of production, physically, and just age-wise. Like it's eventually going to be that time where he leaves and he retires. So Justin Reed, perfect guy to fix that safety room now and also lead you into that next era. Jonas Sanker hasn't practiced yet. He's a prospect I really like, but I won't make any takes about what he's done yet because we haven't seen him. But I think this Saints secondary, outside of Justin Reed, knows they have a playmaker in Alontae Taylor. Where he's going to play, I don't know. Whether he's outside or in the slot, I think the Saints are going to have to make an interesting decision because I think Alontae has shown that he could be a really dynamic slot corner. And when it comes to outside corner, I thought he was really good rookie year. And then obviously last year when they had to switch him back to the outside due to injuries, didn't play that well. So, you got a playmaker. Well, where are you playing that playmaker is the question. So why is Kool-Aid McKinstry the X factor? I think Kool-Aid McKinstry is the X factor because if this guy, who by the way has shined at minicamp, ends up being a legitimate outside corner for the Saints, you're looking at a secondary that has at least 3 guys that can make a play on the ball at any given time. Him, Alontae, Justin Reed. And this is a top 45 pick from last year's draft. The Saints traded up to take him. They clearly liked him. And you could say, oh, well, Dennis Allen's not here anymore. Fine. What about everyone else in the building that really wanted Kool-Aid McKinstry? They're all still there. So I think it's time for him to step up. I think all the intangibles that he had at Alabama are intangibles and traits that can shine at the next level. And even Wednesday, right? A couple of nice pass breakups on a goal line stand. Those are traits that the Saints took him for. He's got active hands. He's got good instincts. And to me, I would be shocked if Kool-Aid McKinstry goes out this year and just doesn't look ready for the moment. I believe that he is. And look, part of that is going to be opportunity. It is a new system. He's got to learn it. Obviously, that's what they're doing right now this summer, especially in mandatory minicamp. But I really do believe if Kool-Aid takes that next step, A, you're helping your defensive line, because if your secondary is holding up in coverage, you got a little bit more time to get after the quarterback. But B, you can be a little bit more clever about how you're going to manipulate that secondary. If you want to move Alontae Taylor around, you could, because you know that Kool-Aid's a good boundary corner. If Kool-Aid's playing really well and Alontae's not playing well, guess what? Makes it a lot easier to let Alontae go. And if Alontae is playing well and he prices himself out in a contract year, but you really like what you have in Kool-Aid, maybe things are a little bit easier for the Saints as they start to be financially responsible going into this next era of Saints football. So I think a lot is riding on Kool-Aid McKinstry for year 2. And it doesn't mean that the defense is going to falter if he's not playing at an elite level, and I don't expect him to play at an elite level, but I expect him to be a really good playmaker for the Saints this year. And I'd argue that if he doesn't take that next step this season, then the Saints defense won't be able to get to where they have to go, which in my opinion is just be competent. When you look at the Saints, a lot of uncertainty both sides of the football. But I feel like the offense might actually surprise some people as long as the quarterback play is serviceable, because I love the offensive line. You guys know I keep talking about how much talent they have and how much I really like that unit, especially if Trevor Penning can play guard. You know you have enough at running back with Alvin. Obviously, Kendra Miller has to stay healthy. You're bringing in Cam Akers for a tryout. Maybe he makes the roster. You added Devin Neal via the draft. Wide receiver is a question mark. There's been some reports about them talking to Gabe Davis. Maybe you bring him in. You really like Olave. You really like Shaheed. But is Brandon Cooks ready to bounce back from his 2024 season, or is the regression going to continue? Dante Pettis, he's been great at minicamp, and he was a nice addition for the Saints last year. Can he be that consistent guy as the wide receiver 4 or 5? So these are all questions, but I think the Saints have enough talent offensively and enough coaching, and more importantly, a really talented O-line to move people in the trenches. Defensively, I don't think they're going to be able to move people in the trenches. So how are you going to win? You got to supplement that with good secondary play. How can you get good secondary play? Guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry have to step up. So I believe Kool-Aid McKinstry is the ultimate X factor for this defense going into the season. Will this take age poorly? Only time will tell, but I think the talent is there for this guy. You took him number 41 overall. Now it's time to see what he could do for the black and gold. So we'll see what happens for Kool-Aid McKinstry and the Saints defense, but he's someone that I'm going to keep high on my radar. And I definitely believe that he's going to be able to be a playmaker for this team. And don't sleep on Quincy Riley, the kid from Louisville that they took in this year's draft. He actually impressed a lot of people this week. So hopefully he can take that next step and give them some depth to that secondary. So we'll see what happens. Before I get into fan Q&As, anything that I missed that I wanted to get to, just 2 things. I briefly mentioned it a couple of seconds ago, but Dante Pettis, one of those guys that just keeps making plays in minicamp. And you look at this Saints wide receiver room, I still believe they're going to add someone. I don't think you look at Gabe Davis without saying, hey, we need another receiver. And I think Gabe Davis, look, he's not a good player. Like, he's not a really good player. But I think Gabe Davis would give the Saints something that this wide receiver room is lacking, right? 6'2", big-bodied wide receiver, good run blocker. You got speed with Olave and Shaheed and Brandon Cooks, obviously. You got a young, maybe has potential type receiver in Bub Means, but you don't know what he is. Dante Pettis is kind of that, like, leaner wide receiver, and he's going to help on special teams. I really do love that aspect about Dante Pettis. Saints need a bigger wide receiver. Maybe you add Gabe Davis. But I wanted to give a shout out to Dante Pettis because although it's just 7-on-7 work right now, he's been outstanding for the Saints, and I think that's a testament to what he's done since joining them late last year. I mean, he only played, I believe, in 8 games, and he did a great job. Other person to mention, though, Jack Stoll, former Eagles tight end. Saints bring him in. Obviously, history working with Kellen Moore and those guys. He's been really good. I mean, he's been working with the ones. And I think, the tight end position, to me, obviously Juwan's your number 1 passing target when it comes to the tight end position. But the Saints need a really good run blocker. And I think with Taysom Hill's injury and not knowing what he's going to be in this offense, if he even plays this year, I still think there's some doubts there in my opinion. I think Jack Stoll's the type of guy that can be that nice run blocker for the Saints. And, you don't realize it in the moment because they're not considered marquee players. But you never realize how important guys like Josh Hill are until the Josh Hills of the world are no longer playing football. And this isn't to say Jack Stoll is going to be the next Josh Hill for the Saints. But if they could get a tight end of that type of magnitude that you're going to get consistent run blocking, you can be very versatile with your personnel with him. I think that this would be a nice fit for the Saints. So far he's playing well. He's playing with the ones a lot. And I hope for Jack Stoll's case, he continues to shine. So we'll see what happens there. Without further ado, guys, let's get into our fan Q&A presented by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere. Nothing runs like a deer. Going to get into any comments that you guys put here. And if you have any other and you didn't get to them yet, drop them in the comment section below, and I'll make sure to get back to you guys. We're going to start off here. Jerry in the chat over here. I don't want to mess it up. Is it Jaser Judah 504? Let me know in the comments. I apologize if I butchered it, but he said Spencer Rattler wins day 2. Hey, look, I mean, the funny thing is the way you ask anyone, it's like some people say Rattler, some people to say Shough. The way I see it, and this is just my opinion, I think it's very close. Rattler has been a little bit more consistent. So as of June 11th, I said it was. As of June 11th, I would say the slight lean goes to Rattler. But I think the Saints are really impressed with what they've seen from both quarterbacks. I really, and this is not me trying to blow smoke up people's ass and trying to, praise this team because, hey, I'm a Saints fan and I want them to have a good season, even though everyone else is saying, hey, it's going to be terrible. I think the Saints are actually really pleased with what they got. I think both guys are developing quite well in this system. Jerry says, my birthday is this Saturday. Happy early birthday to you, Jerry, man. I hope you have a good one. Name Not Dot says Spencer's basically auditioning for the Raiders. I wouldn't say the Raiders. I mean, Raiders got Geno Smith, obviously. I still think they have Aiden O'Connell, so I don't think so. Look, the way I see it for Rattler, and I would say the same thing for Shough, but obviously for Shough, it's different because the Saints drafted him second round, and if he ends up being this, it's a bad career, in my opinion. But if you're Rattler, obviously you're fighting your tail off to win this starting job. I think even if Rattler doesn't win this starting job, but looks good enough where the Saints are like, man, he's definitely QB2, and he really could be one of those high-end backup quarterbacks. I'm talking about the guys that, like, when your starting quarterback goes down for like 3-4 weeks, you're not worried because you know this guy can handle the ship. You make a great career as a backup. And again, I'm about to say, like, I would say the same thing for Shough. Only thing is the Saints took him top 40. So if you end up saying a top 40 picks a backup quarterback, that's not a great career path as opposed to Rattler, who was a 5th-round pick, where if you're a 5th-round pick and you stay in the NFL for a while as a backup, I think that is a really good career path. Rattler, to me, I would not be surprised, although I think he's got a better arm, I would not be surprised if he's one of those kind of like Sam Howell type quarterbacks where they could start if they need to, and they're going to be around the league for a while. They got a good arm. They're good locker room dudes. Would not be surprised if he doesn't win the Saints quarterback job. If he wins the Saints quarterback job and he plays well, obviously, A, all power to him, and B, we'll see what happens with him and what his career could look like. But I don't think he's auditioning for other teams right now. Personally, I think that these are your two Saints quarterbacks, 1 and 2, whichever way it plays out. And I don't think either one would be a distraction to the other or a problem for the other. I think if Rattler loses to Shough, there's respect there. You understand it, and Rattler's going to prepare. So if his number does get called, he's ready to do damage. And if Shough loses to Rattler, obviously it feels a little different because you feel like it'd be a matter of time if Rattler slips up that he gets to start because he was handpicked. But I'd imagine he'll put in the work as well. So, the one thing I'll say about this quarterback room, I'm not worried about any tension or ill will between these guys. I think they've come ready to work with the right mentality, and I'm pretty happy about it. Jason Judah 504 says Rattler leads the way. I would say that's definitely the case right now. Also says, how's the rookie from Virginia doing, the safety? So we haven't seen Jonas Sanker play yet, unfortunately. Still waiting for that. He's the type of prospect. If you guys just go watch his Virginia tape, I think he is a savvy guy, and I really, really, really hope that he'll be on the field soon because I think he could be a difference maker. I really do believe he could be a difference maker for this team. So we'll see what happens. They haven't said the extent, but I would like to see him out there on the field because I think Jonas Sanker is the perfect secondary player for, the Saints right now and what they can do. That said, just went to look just in case. Kelmore said it's a minor thing. So we'll see what happens. But hopefully he's back on the field because I do have high hopes for this kid. Name Not Dot says we're going to have traditional defensive ends cover curls and flats. I did think about that. Chase Young's going to be out in coverage. Cam Jordan's going to be out in coverage. Carl Grant's out in coverage. I feel like that could be a mess. Chase Young's a freak athlete, though, so who the fuck knows? I would not be surprised. Matt says Rattlers had more time with Moore. I thought they're all learning it now. They are technically all learning it now, on the fly. But Moore got hired in February. So technically speaking, Rattler had a little bit of a head start than Shough in terms of learning the terminology and everything. So again, is it a huge advantage? No, it's not like, oh, if Rattler doesn't win the job, that's embarrassing, get a huge jump. No, it's a very small advantage, but he did have a couple more weeks, maybe several more weeks, I'd say, than Shough when it comes to learning the terminology of Kellen Moore's playbook. Taysom was fun, but it's time to let go. I'm kind of at the same point. Taysom Hill's one of my favorite Saints players. I would say Taysom Hill's one of my favorite football players, period. I think that more players should have his type of mentality where, like, yeah, you want to play quarterback, but you know what? If that's not meant to be, and if that's not what the team needs you to do, you do whatever's best. And, I think a lot of players can learn from that type of humility and selflessness that Taysom has. But new offensive system, both quarterbacks that they're playing right now are mobile, right? Rattler's got enough wiggle to his game, and Shough ran a 4.6 340, so obviously he can hustle. But I just don't know what is Taysom Hill's fit. And you're in your mid-30s, you're coming off a really bad ACL injury. I would love to see Taysom Hill making plays for the Saints still. I hope he still makes plays for the Saints. But I'm at that point where, like, I feel like the end is near, and I'm at peace with it. It sucks that this is the way it would end because it'd be off an injury and whatnot, but I'm at peace with it. Where, a couple of months ago, I'd probably be really upset. Yellow says, honest question. If Tyler was drafted in the 5th, like Spencer, would the conversation still be the same? Also had the rookie cornerback look coming back to practice. So the conversation would not be the same. I do personally. So are we saying both of them are 5th round picks? I think if both of them are 5th round picks, or let's put it this way, right? If the conversation was Rattler versus Haener, it's let the best man win, period. Even if it's by an inch, you let the best man play. They're both day 3 picks. I think the reason for Shough that it's different is really that he was picked with Kellen Moore on the coaching staff. That's the main difference. Because even if Tyler Shough was a 2nd round pick, but he wasn't drafted by Kellen Moore, yes, he'd still have an advantage just because of the draft cachet and just being a day 2 pick as opposed to day 3. But there wouldn't be that looming cloud of like, hey, Kellen Moore selected this guy. He had him as his 2nd best quarterback. There's a reason he wanted him in New Orleans. That's what really matters. And is it unfortunate? Absolutely. Is this how the league works though? It does, it really does. I think back a couple of years ago when the 49ers had Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, everyone said at practice, Jimmy G was better than him. And it's like, well, you still started Trey Lance because you took him 3rd. Like, where you get picked matters in this league. It really does. As for the cornerback, though, you mentioned Quincy Riley. Quincy Riley looked pretty good. He looked pretty good for the New Orleans Saints. And what I'd say for Quincy Riley is he's a versatile guy, hard-hitting corner. Saints kind of like what they've seen so far from him. So, hopefully he keeps it up. I think for New Orleans, they're going to need as many guys in the back end of that defense to step up. As many guys. Because I'm just not so sure they have the dogs up front to be a wrecking crew. Any thoughts on maybe going to get Jair Alexander or bringing back Trey if the Bengals drop the ball since we have cap space? Jair, I would say for New Orleans, like, yeah, they need outside corner help, but a team that's in my opinion, on the cusp of being a Super Bowl contender just cut him. Now I know money matters, so I can't act like Jair Alexander just got cut because hey, he just got cut because he's not good enough. I know money matters. Packers made a financial decision. But part of me does feel like for New Orleans, they might be better served going elsewhere depending on where the money lies and what the market is. I feel like Jair Alexander is going to have a way more, I'd say, busy market as opposed to a guy like Asante Samuel Jr., who I think is someone you keep an eye out on. He's got a physical coming up. So he's got a neck injury. He's getting checked up on it soon. If that checks out well, I would not be surprised if he's on the Saints roster before training camp. If it doesn't check out well, you can cross it off the board. They're not going to sign him if the medicals don't clear. But for Jair, Saints have a need, so I would not be against it. I just don't know if they're going to get him. I don't have a lot of hope in that. But I wouldn't be necessarily against it. They do need corner help. As for Trey, to me, it always comes down to, does this make sense for your team at a given time? And as much as I love Trey Hendrickson, I don't know if the Saints trading for him, it's going to be 31 in December. You're going to have to give him a monster contract. You're talking $35 million probably a year. I don't know if I would do that because it's also going to cost me draft capital what is the draft capital though, right? If it's not a first or second round pick, you start twisting my arm and like, all right, maybe I could, but you got to imagine it's a premium pick and then you got to spend a lot of money. And I just don't think the Saints right now are in, position to make that move. If they felt like they could contend, I would say all for it because they could use a just game wrecker on the defensive line. But I just don't know if this is the time for the Saints. I'm very hesitant to that. Really like the big tight end from UCLA. He has some nastiness and toughness about him. They took Maliki Matavao in the 7th round, guy that year by year has gotten better, which is good. You always love that trajectory for a player. Still young, 22 years old. I think for the Saints, there's a good opportunity for players like him. The tight end room is not good in terms of depth. So a player like him, training camp's going to be vital. Preseason's going to be vital because right now it seems like it's Juwan Johnson, it's Jack Stoll, and then it's everyone else. So we'll see what happens. I also would mention a guy who I thought was going to take that next step for the Saints and at least be somewhat of a playmaker is Dallin Holker. He's a guy who still managed to float on the roster last year. UDFA, maybe he takes that step too. So Matavao and Holker might be the guys that you're hoping one of them steps up because that'll give you a younger option that you can maybe develop. Xavier says Taysom could be a great veteran presence in the locker room like Winston. He could. He absolutely could. Look, I'm not getting rid of Taysom for no reason if I'm New Orleans. There would have to be a reason. Like if he's saying, hey, man, I don't like my role here. Would you be willing to trade me if there is a trade suitor? All right, you try to do right by the player. But if he's not looking to go and the Saints aren't looking to get rid of him, obviously you just keep him around. Zilla says, are you going to any open practices? At the moment, no. I could get back to you guys, though. Let's see how my July shapes up. I'd love to go to training camp if I could. If not, home openers week 1 or week 2. I can't remember. One of those weeks I'll be there, though. Week 1 or week 2. Would like to stop by for training camp, though. So we'll see what happens there. Yellow Nose says if Taysom does come back, I'd honestly like him to just go to Denver. Not that I hate him or anything, but I feel like him playing so many positions slows the development of younger players. He did great for us, but it's time to do right by the cap and by the youth coming in. Won't know what we got if you never get to hit the field. And as for Jair Alexander, isn't worth it purely off the injuries. You want to be healthy, and we need to stop chasing the what if in a player. If we can go to 60%, 70% healthy to the year, it could be in the wild card at best. Look, I don't know yet about what their ceiling is going to be if they're healthy. I will say to your point, though, everyone's so quick to say, God, the Saints are going to be awful. They're going to be awful this season. Did you see what they were last year? They won 5 games, and now they don't have Derek Carr. And, I don't think the Saints are going to be a special team this year. But I would say anyone saying that, can we just take things into context? Chris Olave missed half the season with concussions. Eric McCoy, their best offensive lineman, missed half the season. Chase Young needed a ramp-up period, probably due to health, but also they shuffled the coaching staff when Rizzi took over. And Chase Young went from not doing anything to being a pretty good playmaker for them. You traded Lattimore. Adebo went down. Now those guys are out, understandably so, but you're hoping Kool-Aid takes that next step. You upgraded at safety with Justin Reed. I thought safety was their weakest position group going into the offseason, so Justin Reed obviously elevates that to another level. Talent-wise, you should be better on the offensive line. Running back depth is still such an if. But as long as Alvin's healthy, you feel like you got enough there. So we'll see what happens. Now, are there concerns? Absolutely. I don't know what I'm getting from this defensive line, especially up the middle. I don't know. Does Devon Godchall play well? Possibly, but I'm not sure. Is Vernon Broughton from Texas ready to make an impact? I hope so, because I think he's a versatile piece, and you can move him. You don't matter if even or odd man front. He could be a playmaker for the Saints. Carl Granderson, he had a little bit of a regression. Can he bounce back this year? We'll see what happens with him. Linebacker group, I'm a little bit worried about. So much rides on DeMario at this age, and he's declining. So can Stutzman step up? I've heard the Saints really, really like him and what he's shown. And Pete Werner. I know Pete Werner can be a good player because I've seen Pete Werner be a good player. He's got to get back to being more consistent. Now, do I think the Saints can make a playoff push like in a bad division? I'm still going to lean towards no. But there's this idea that the Saints are just definitely going to be the worst team in the league. And my counter argument would be like, if their starting quarterback is like the 22nd or 23rd best guy in the league, which isn't a good number, but it's not the worst quarterback in the league, they have enough to manufacture a serviceable offense because they're going to have a talented offensive line. You're going to be led by Kellen Moore, who, by the way, is getting more and more comfortable as he speaks to the media, which I love. You're seeing a guy that's settling in. Kellen Moore in March, not the same guy in June, and I love that. So really happy to see Kellen Moore getting acclimated in New Orleans. But, you have, in my opinion, you can't get worse than what you had at coaching staff last year. You can't. So upgraded coaching staff, hopefully, at least offensively it is. Special teams, I don't know. I know the Saints got an automatic money-making kicker in Blake Grupe, who was 27-31 last year. So you feel good about your kicking game at least. I think a lot of it, and people don't want to view it that way, I think it's going to ride on the defense, because quarterback's uncertainty but like if they can run the football well, and I believe they can because of their O-line, they'll be able to stay on game. So the health does matter, to your point. I know I just went on a rant about it from your comment, Yellow Nose, but you're right about the health. And about Jair Alexander, since you mentioned it, like if you just look at his history, he's played in 14 games in the last 2 seasons. And if I were to go far back now, and this isn't, I don't mean to be rude towards Jair Alexander, because this is a 2-time Pro Bowler, just a really good corner, one of the better corners in the league when healthy. But you take the last 4 seasons. In 2021, he played in 4 games. In 2022, he played in 16 games, which is great. But 2023 and 2024, he played in 7 games apiece. So, you're missing more than half the season in 3 out of the 4 years. It's just tough to really get behind that. Flight Mazark says Saints could be secretly special. Our biggest offseason move was Kellen and his staff. There's no doubt about it. That was the biggest offseason move. The most necessary move. And, I don't know if Kellen's going to be the guy. My fingers are crossed that he is. I love that the Saints hired Kellen Moore because, I said it when Mike McCarthy was linked to them. I was one of those people who didn't mind if they hired Mike McCarthy. But there is a ceiling with Mike McCarthy. And for Kellen Moore, we don't know what the ceiling is. Now, the floor has to be lower than Mike McCarthy because Mike McCarthy is, shown he's a playoff caliber coach every single season. But when you're in the Saints position, cap situation wasn't great. It's getting much better, which is lovely for us Saints fans. Quarterback situation is an unknown right now. You got talent with Rattler and with Shough, but you don't know what you got yet. You take a swing on a coach. So, yeah, he was, Kellen Moore's absolutely the biggest move that they made. I love that he is trying to make these guys buy into the culture. The vibes are much better. There's something building. Now, does it equal success? I can't say for certain, but I like what he's doing. No doubt about it. Yellow Nose says the league changes year to year. Everyone technically is better on paper. It's foolish to think that we regress or stay the same. Better coaches and vibe can actually do wonders too. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's where a lot of it stems from is everyone convinced, because this team, they struggled last year, they're going to struggle again. I just think that's nonsense. That's just kind of where I'm at personally. I think that the Saints did struggle last year, but that was a team that was ready for the season to end. That was a team that, did anyone look at the roster, like outside of Saints fans? Anyone look at what they were, trotting out there at the end of the year? I mean, Rattler was throwing to like Kevin Austin Jr. Dante Pettis had to be their wide receiver 1 for a little bit. MVS went off. So like, the Saints might be bad this year. They might, we don't know what Kellen Moore's going to be. We don't know what their quarterback situation is going to look like, but they were like a rotting corpse last year. That's not going to be the case this year. And I expect a bit more fight. Jaden says, hey, hot take, defensive end Chase Young will have 15 plus sacks this season with new defensive coordinator, Brandon Staley. Man, 15 plus sacks. I hope you're right. I absolutely hope you're right. I don't know if he will, but I hope you're right. That'd be crazy. Absolutely crazy if he ends up having 15 plus sacks. Because then I got to recalibrate how I view the Saints defense. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but I would have to recalibrate. I will say, though, I'll put myself on the record here. I thought Chase Young played really well at the end of last season. If he can duplicate that, I think he could be a 9 to 10 sack player for the Saints this year. And, 9 to 10 sacks and getting after the quarterback, I think that'd be great for him. And by the way, if we just go by the numbers, so I'm going to pull them up from Chase Young for last year. It's about finishing the plays. That's what's going to matter. And last year, he had a career high 21 quarterback hits. And in terms of pressures, he had a career high 34. So Chase Young was he was applying pressure. He wasn't finishing the plays. He finished some towards the end of the year, but he wasn't finishing them. New system, feeling a little bit healthier. Obviously, doesn't have to do that whole freaking rehab over a neck injury. Maybe this is the year. 15 again might be a little rich for my blood. I love the take, though. I think, Jaden, that is the definition of a hot take. I love it. I'm going to go 9 or 10. And I think 9 or 10 would be a damn good season for him. Yellow Nose says it's looking like our offensive line at least should be better. By how much? Time will tell, but I feel the confidence of the building is visibly different, even if I'm only watching videos. Well, I'd say just even having the ability to say, hey, let's adapt here. Let's put Trevor Penning at guard. Let's see how he plays. I love that. I love that. You move Fuaga to right tackle. I think he's going to be even better than he was last year at left. I just think right tackle will be a little bit easier for him. A lot of it's going to ride on Kelvin Banks. Obviously, he's got to step up and be great out the rip. I think he can be, though. I mean, this is a guy who was really consistent at Texas his whole career. So we'll see what happens. But I do feel like the offensive line can really put it together. Flight Mazark says if we get quarterback 15 to 20 production out of one of our guys, we'll be looking real good. I agree. I do agree that's part of it, I definitely think that, to me, if you believe the Saints are going to be better than what everyone else is expecting, they got to get mediocre to almost mediocre quarterback play. It can't be bottom of the barrel. If it's bottom of the barrel, that's where the screws kind of unwind there for this team. Yono says, I just hope we don't go crazy with this new money coming, keep the status quo, and build where we need to in the draft. I haven't heard anything yet. I think if the Saints were to make moves, it's going to be ones that will be one-year deals, right? If you bring in Gabe Davis, it's going to be a one-year deal. He's got about $11 million coming in from the Jags, so he can just take a vet minimum if he wants, and probably will, whether it is with the Saints. I know the Steelers have been linked to him and a couple of others, but you're not going to go crazy money spending. I mentioned Asante Samuel Jr. He's got that checkup coming up on his neck, and if that goes well, then he'll be back. We'll be back in the NFL, obviously, but potentially being back for another visit with the Saints. I think that also can be a guy that the Saints pursue. So we'll see what happens, but I don't expect them to do any huge signings. Nothing crazy for me. Do you know if we had anyone that could translate to 3-4 defense from last year's crew? I mean, look, the first move they really made was going out to get Godchall because you want that, that kind of nose tackle to lead that group. So obviously the Saints felt like they don't have the best personnel in that regard. But this isn't just going to be like your traditional 3-4. I think Brandon Staley said it multiple times. He's got to adapt. He's going to adapt. You're just trying to figure out the best way to get your best 11 on the field. Now, do I think they have guys that translate well to it? I would say interior, sure. Because even guys, in my opinion, I think guys like Cam Jordan at this stage of their career might actually be better served as like a 3-4 defensive end than a 4-3 defensive end. Because the one thing about Cam that he still does well is stuff the run. Getting after the quarterback obviously is just not happening anymore at this age. But we'll see. I think Carl Granderson's a guy that I'm very fascinated to see what happens. Because like I said, I think Chase Young's going to play well this year. I really do. I'm a big believer in what he did last year was not a fluke. I think he could replicate that, especially at the end of last year. Looking at Carl Granderson, I want to see what happens with him because I think that he has the potential for the Saints to be that guy that opens up everything else for the Saints. And again, got to see how these guys all fit here, but I'm curious to see what happens. Clint says, who cares? We have no quarterback that we know of at the moment. Obviously a bit of a mystery there. Xavier says, if Carl can get back to being present, that should open up Chase for far more opportunities. I agree. The right one says, Saints culture as teams always been built on. If you sell to New Orleans culture, winning comes. Sean and Drew brought in. Kellen seems to have that same approach with his flavor. So far, it feels that way. And I hope that is what ends up happening, Yellow Nose says Chase gets 8 to 9 sacks and another high pressure rate. Watch Alante go off for 5 himself. Well, I hope that's the case, right? I would like to see them move around Alante. In my opinion, that's where he's best. I just don't know if Alante's your traditional boundary corner. I think he's just better off being kind of a defensive weapon. That's what he was at the beginning of last year. Ebony P says, if Kendrick Miller stays healthy, he's going to be a problem for any defense. I don't disagree with you. I don't want to get my hopes up, though. I really don't want to get my hopes up because I went back to look at Kendrick Miller from last season. Every carry of his, it just feels like he's running with purpose. The problem is he's really rarely on the field, and it's tough to get hyped up in that. Jerry says, I wish all Saints fans would get on the same page, just saying. I will say this about Jerry about that. I don't think there's really anyone more optimistic than you, Jerry, and first off, I commend it. I do agree. I think if there's ever a time for us Saints fans to kind of be on the same page of let's embrace this new page, this new era of Saints football. let's embrace this quarterback competition because see, everyone's picking sides. I have no dog in this fight. I want the best quarterback to win. Now, do I think it probably serves the Saints best if Shough wins? Yeah, because I think you drafted him top 40. He has more potential. But whoever wins, I'm all for. Got a new head coach. We've all been dying for them to get a new head coach. They do that. I just feel like some people still kind of have like sour grapes over certain things. If this situation for the Saints doesn't work out over the next 2 years, the one guy who Saints fans are still complaining about, which is Mickey Loomis, who will eventually be gone. And we'll have nothing to complain about. But right now, I just feel like if there's ever a time to be a little bit more optimistic and feel good about your team, it's now. Because you know what? If the Saints get their ass kicked in September and October, we'll deal with it then. Why in June kind of set yourself up for feeling like, oh man, this team's going to be awful? So then what? I'm going to be sad in June, July, August, and then be sad September, October, November, December. I'm just trying to feel pretty good about this team. And to be honest, I said before, I don't think record is going to indicate if the Saints have a good season. The Saints can go 6-11 this year, compete in most of their games, play better football towards the end of the year, and I would consider that a win. To me, the record's not going to matter as much as, does Kellen Moore look like he can coach? Do either one of these quarterbacks look like they can play as a starter in the NFL? And does this team ascend as the year goes along? Those are the three things I'm watching. Because the Saints have a tough start to the season. They could go like 0-4. Play Arizona Cardinals, San Francisco 49ers, Seattle Seahawks, Buffalo Bills. You start off 0-4. And then if you finish the season with a 6-11 record, which means you would have finished the season 6-7, all right, you're starting to play better football as the year went along. And I can at least build off something going into the next year. So we'll see what happens. Jaden says, where do you rank Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed as wide receiver duos in the NFL right now? Great question. I have to pull up the standings real quick so I can get into every team here. Look, I'll give you teams. I'll take them over for sure. I'll take them over the Pats duo. I'll take them over the when I take them over the Jets. Yeah, I think I'd take them over the Jets right now. Take them over the Bills. Would not take them over the Dolphins. Would not take them over the Bengals. Obviously, that's a great duo there. Looking at, the problem is that some of these teams have star receivers but not great duos, right? Like Texans, I'm looking Nico Collins, a dog. He's the best out of that bunch, but I think Tank Dell and Christian Kirk are their other options. Wouldn't take him over the Jags. I really like the idea of Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas. I think that's really sharp. Let's see who else we got. Eagles, obviously, I'll take their duo, A.J. Brown and Devontae. Got to go Commanders. I think Terry could be a pretty good fit with Debo. We'll see which version of Debo shows up, though. CeeDee Lambs and George Pickens can be a nightmare, but on paper, I'd say that's better right now. What else we got? Lions duo. It's better just because of Amon-Ra St. Brown, but Vikings, obviously, Addison and Jefferson are better. I would say that Olave and Shaheed are better than the Packers duo. Bears, a lot of it rides on Rome Odunze. Is he going to take that next step? So I'll give them the edge, but that's an uncertainty. Bucks, obviously, I think have a better duo. Falcons, going to be honest, I would give the edge to the Saints. I know Darnell Mooney's a good player. I'm bullish on Shaheed. I think Shaheed could be a really good player. And obviously, you guys know I really like Olave. Panthers right now, obviously, Saints have a better duo, in my opinion. Niners, depends if Ayuk's healthy, but right now he's banged up. Rams have a better duo with Devontae and Puka Nacua. Seahawks, JSN and Cooper Kupp. I don't fucking know what Cooper Kupp's going to look like right now. I'll give him the edge, but that's a mystery. And then Cardinals, who the hell knows if Marvin Harrison's going to be the guy. So, I don't know where that would rank. I'm sorry, Jaden. I didn't really answer the question. I was just trying to run them off, but they're not at the bottom of the barrel. I'll tell you that much. Saints definitely have a better duo than a lot of other teams, in my opinion. That's just kind of where I'm at. Flame Mazark says, I like the run style, the rookie running back we got this year. I think Devin Neal's definitely a patient runner, excellent vision. We'll see if that translates to the next level, though, because you do need some burst. I would say that's the one thing he lacks, but how can you not like what he did at Kansas? He was great. Jerry says, just glad to see all Saints fans witnessing the new look for the Saints. Isaiah says, Bub Memes is going to have a breakout season. I sure hope so. Isaiah also says, we got some damn good coaches. I'm excited to see what they bring. Hell yeah, man. Loving the positivity. Absolutely loving it. Xavier says, I can't wait until preseason so we get a true test of these quarterbacks and O-line. Definitely going to get a test for the quarterbacks. O-line, maybe not as much. It really depends if teams are playing their starting defensive lines for a while, which it's too early to kind of tell. But, definitely feel like we'll get a good idea of the quarterbacks, because obviously they're going to have to play. Even though it could be against vanilla coverage, they're going to have to play against those live bullets, as I like to call it, and that's where you get a good idea. Jaden says, do you think defensive coordinator Brandon Staley can still be that great coordinator he was with the Rams back in 2020? Yes or no? So I'll give you, it's a yes and no for me. Do I think he's going to be great this year? Probably not, because I don't think he has the personnel. Do I think he could still be that defensive coordinator? Absolutely. I would say Brandon Staley is one of the biggest mysteries in the NFL because his sample size as a defensive coordinator was so slim. Like, he literally was the defensive coordinator for the Rams. They had great success with him, and then immediately goes to the Chargers. Like, he literally was the defensive coordinator for one season. That's it. That's all we have on him. Now, the one season is outstanding, so it's tough to say. But I do believe that he can get back to being a good defensive coordinator for sure. I think this might be a tough year because you got to find the right pieces for him. And I think it's going to be a learning period. And that's why I said I expect the Saints to kind of start slow. And if they could build towards the end of the year, I'm going to be really happy. But out the gate, you're running a new offensive system and new defensive system, and you got to figure out what personnel best fits that scheme. So I'm going to have a lot of grace with him. Now, if he can't figure stuff out by November, mid-November, early December, then he might not be the guy for the job. But I think he'll be able to figure it out. I think he's talented enough. Sandra says, with where we are ranked, the sky's the limit because nobody expects much of us. Technically not wrong. I see everyone saying the Saints are going to finish last, and laughing at them. They were talking about odds the other day, and I think they had them at like plus 400, 500, even win the division or something crazy. I don't know what it was. Or maybe make the playoffs. It was something nuts. And a bunch of ESPN guys are kind of laughing about it. And I get it, right? Like, it's easy to poke fun at the Saints right now, but they can only go up. If that's the way everyone's looking at them, they can only go up. It's wild. Yellow Nose says it's wild that we universally agree Derek needed to go, but in the same breath are upset that we are actually moving forward with QBs. Shaking my head, doesn't matter who wins. We are winning. We are winning away, but at this point, I will set our floor at 6 wins. Max 10 is definitely possible. I don't know what the max is for this team. I keep saying I kind of think they're a 6-11 team because I think they're going to have a lot of early growing pains and then play well towards the end of the year. I could be dead wrong about it. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they win way more than 6 games. But that's kind of where I'm at now. As for the Derek Carr thing, definitely think they needed to do it. Good thing that they did it. And we'll just see. Like I said, we'll see who wins that quarterback battle. But I think both guys have really embraced it with the right approach. The right one says, I'm excited about our new, just excited about the new, I guess. Heck yeah, perfect marriage. Trevor at guard. We're running the read option, I guess. Can you imagine Trevor at a pulling guard? Yeah, look, I sorry, Dwight, your message confused me for a sec, but I do think that you're putting Trevor Penning at a spot where he can't be attacked as much. Yeah, that's the truth. We know he can run block. We know you got to get him moving, because I will say the one thing about Trevor Penning is he's got good athleticism for a guy his size. You're sticking him between McCoy and Banks. You're limiting the amount of times he can get exposed, in my opinion. So I love that idea. Mind you, if this is the rotation they go with, even your bench, like, there's a very real possibility that the Saints are going to field an offensive line that not only has a nice, really good 5, you feel like the depth is pretty good. Will Clapp's been around the league. He's, at the very least, a good backup. Dylan Radins, you play him at guard, you play him at tackle. That's a great 6th offensive line to have. Landon Young, I still think is a guy that is talented enough to be a spot starter if need be. Just, unfortunately, gets hurt a lot. But the Saints have depth at their O-line. It's the one group that I feel really, really, really good about. And I hope my confidence doesn't change in that group. Yellow Nose says, speaking of wide receivers, we're definitely light and speedy. I'm guessing it's going to be a point to stress the corners and make the run game work better. It could. I do think them showing interest in Gabe Davis makes a ton of sense, though. Gabe Davis would give them a nice run blocker, give them a pretty bigger bodied wide receiver, I'd say, and they can use that. Isaiah says, which rookie has the best season? That's a really tough one. I'll give 2 answers. The rookie that would be best for the Saints for him to shine the most would be Tyler Shough, because he plays quarterback. The rookie that I think will have the best season, I think, will be Kelvin Banks, because I think the Saints are bullish on this kid and they know he could play, and he was such a consistent guy for the Longhorns. I'll say he ends up being the best one. The 2 that could be nice playmakers at mid-round talent, Danny Stutzman, Quincy Riley. Early reactions are really good for those guys. Coaching staffs really like what they've seen so far. So I think I think that's where I'm at. So I think best season goes to Kelvin Banks. I hope the best season goes to Tyler Shough, because then that means the Saints got themselves a quarterback. And then two guys for the number 3 part that I think are going to step up: Quincy Riley, Danny Stutzman could be nice role players. Fine ass, how's Isaac Yodom doing? I'd have to go check back, but everything I heard, not great. Like, not terrible, but I think for New Orleans, again, I mentioned it before, Asante Samuel's got a checkup coming up. Would not be surprised at all if Asante Samuel Jr.'s, if his medicals aren't that bad and he could play this year, I'd imagine that the Saints end up bringing him in, as long as money works out on both ends. That's kind of where I'm at. Jaden says, were you surprised how many Saints showed up at Saints Day 1 minicamp? No, I'm not surprised. Isaiah says, I think our starting wide receiver should be Olave, Shaheed, and Means. Move Cooks to the second team so we have more size. Look, this might seem like a lame response, but I honestly, to be honest, Isaiah, I don't think it really matters who the starters are. I think the game will dictate what personnel they use. So I anticipate Brandon Cooks being wide receiver 3 for them. But that doesn't mean that you're going to play him as much. To your point, like, you might have to get into games where you got to be a little bit more physical, and that will call for Bub Memes. Or if the Saints sign Gabe Davis, there might be games where you want to run the football a little bit more, maybe be in more play action sets. Maybe that calls for Gabe Davis's number. So if the Saints sign him. So I totally get what you're saying. I hope Bub Meme steps up. Not only do you want to see the rookie class play well, you want to see the second-year guys take that next step. He falls in that category. But I wouldn't be too worried about how it falls out. I do think Bub Memes has played well, though. I think the Saints so far are liking what they're seeing. Captain Deluxe says, if we don't generate a big pass rush, it's going to be longer than expected season. Granderson must come up huge. Yeah, that's why before I mentioned Kool-Aid, like, I don't know if the Saints have the guys on the defensive line and may be playmakers consistently. Might need the secondary to carry their weight, and that means that'll help out your D-line. But obviously, I mentioned Chase Young before. I think he'll have a pretty good season if he could pull off what he did at the second half of the year. But yeah, Carl Granderson's the type of guy where he could be a good player because we've seen it, right? Like, we've seen Granderson in 2023. He had 8.5 sacks. Problem last year is there was that regression. And the bigger issue, and I'll pull it up for a sec. I just want to go to the game by game for Granderson. He had 5.5 sacks last year. 3 of the sacks came in the first 3 weeks. So from weeks 4 to 17, he had 2.5 sacks. Like, that's bad production. So I agree with you. I do agree with you. It'll be a long season if they can't get pressure on the quarterback. And unfortunately, that goes for like every team. Like, I don't care if you have the TJ Watts and Myles Garrett of the world or not. You got to make sure you're getting after the quarterback, or it's going to be a long day for you. Hey, did you see Garrett Nussmeier at Saints practice? I did. Not really surprised by it, though. I think makes sense. Got some time off from LSU. Might as well go see what's going on. Sandra says, hope this isn't too corny, but several players have come back with new looks, weight, and style. I think it's because they feel a true difference. Could work both ways. Look, I think I'm a big body language guy, and I know some people don't care for it. The only person I'm never going to read body language for is Alvin Kamara, because Alvin can look like the most aggravated dude in the world, and he's going to be a great leader. He's going to ball out on Sundays, and he's not going to do anything to hurt the team. So outside of him, I'm a big body language guy, and I'd say the Saints are doing a good job of everyone being kind of uplifting, upbeat, which is good. In terms of guys looking a little bit different, getting in better playing weight, feeling healthier, part of that is these younger guys are learning, which is part of the process. As for guys like Cam Jordan changing their hairstyle, I think that's the most Cam Jordan thing Cam Jordan could have done. It was pretty funny. I just hope he ends up making plays for them on the field. But you're not wrong about guys feeling a difference, though. The vibe has definitely changed for the Saints. I know they said they'll rotate and everything, but I hope they don't play favorites with vets like Cam. If a younger body is looking better, then play them. Yeah, I don't think – I could be wrong. I don't think they'll play favorites. The Saints coaching staff, they're there to win. And they know how vital it is to make sure they put out the best possible team for them. So, look, everyone loves Cam, respects the hell out of him. But if he's not ready to be a difference maker for this team, then I just don't see how you put him on the field. And I don't think they will. So that's just kind of where I'm at with that. And I wouldn't be worried about that. Xavier says it's good to see AK on the field again. Yeah, something about AK, man. Like, to me, the offseason doesn't really end until once I see AK in the Saints uniform at practice, I'm ready for week 1. I know it sounds stupid, but he's just such an effortlessly good football player. It's fun to see him out there. Jaden says, one more hot take. AK and Olave will both have their best seasons of their career in Kellen Moore's offense. I'm with you on Olave. I think if he's healthy, I really think he could do it. And, his best season, I think he'd only need to have like 1,200 receiving yards to have his best season. As for Alvin, I'm going to say no, because I still think his 2020 season and his 2018 seasons are going to be tough to replicate. But God, if he has a career year, I think the Saints make the playoff. Like, to me, that's how much it would change. If Alvin had the best year of his career, you're talking 1,700 plus scrimmage yards, 20-something touchdowns, because that's the best 2 years of his career, 18 touchdowns, 21 touchdowns. So let's go for 19.5 as like the number. If he goes anywhere near over, man, I mean, that would definitely change it. But I understand your point, Jaden, though, because to Isaiah's point that he brings up, O-line should be better on paper. And Kellen Moore, obviously, better coach to get everything working for this team. So we'll see what happens, but vibes are feeling good for the Saints right now at minicamp. Obviously, you got to see how this quarterback battle shapes up, and these guys will have plenty of time to get ready for training camp and all that. Hopefully I get some guys on the show actually between now and the start of training camp, maybe talk about what's going on with Kellen Moore and what they like. So we'll see what happens. Jaden says, were you surprised how many Saints fans were at minicamp? Nope. Because Saints fans might say that they're done with the team. They changed things up, and we love this team. So, I said it before, I've been frustrated with the Saints in the past, and you always kind of go back to them. So, Dwight says, I've often heard the best friend to rookie quarterback is a good run game. How come that doesn't apply to the Saints, especially with our backfield? It certainly does. Look, that's why, to me, and I keep going back to it, I love the talent on this offensive line. If the Saints are going to be a competent team this year, O-line is where it starts. It's very hard to be a god-awful team if you can control the trenches. If you can control the line of scrimmage because you are just physically imposing your will, you can't be an awful team. I'm sorry you can't, because that's where teams win. I look at the Eagles last year. They got talent all over the football field, but they beat the crap out of people in the trenches. And that, to me, is the main reason why they won. So, to me, that's where I'm at. Sandra says, with the improvements in the O-line, AK should show out. If they open it up, he's going to fly. I hope so. Isaiah says, Saints fans will die hard. We might be mad, but we're not out. Totally agree on that. And I think that's the perfect way to kind of close it out, because that's where you guys are at. Don't matter if it's a Wednesday in June or when we get to the season, we have our post-game live stream. You guys are always showing up. So, Saints minicamp, obviously, we talked about Shough, we talked about Rattler, talked about Kool-Aid McKinstry and the O-line and a couple of underrated weapons for this team. If you guys haven't already, make sure to like the video. It really helps out the channel. Make sure also to subscribe to Boot Crew Media, because we'll have more coverage here of the Saints and the Pelicans. But that's going to do it, guys. So make sure you stay tuned for another episode of the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.